Hello, my name is Paul Angelone. I'm a senior advisor with the Advisory Services Program, and I'm joined by Marilee Utter. Hi, Marilee.
Hi, good morning.
Well, good morning. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do and your expertise?
Sure. I live in Denver. I'm a longtime ULI member, and my company is City Venture Associates. We do advisory work around the country, primarily domestically, helping with development advice on transformational projects, a lot of transit-oriented development, and a lot of P3s.
And about how many panels have you been on?
Oh, about a dozen, I'd say.
And when we asked you, why do you say yes?
Well, you know, they're really intense. They're a lot of work. So every time you ask, you think about it. And I say yes, one, because I always learn so much. I mean, I get to go to another city, learn about that city in a very special way that you'd never learn just as a tourist. Not, you know, as a tourist, you feel like a voyeur. When you're there as a panelist, you're part of the team. Usually we're working with the public sector, so that gives us a very special perspective as well. You learn from the other panelists. They're always amazing people. And then the problems are complicated, hard problems. So you learn about that. So the learning for me is always the first thing I think about is, oh, does this sound interesting in a great city and all that? But then I'm always amazed at how much give back there is. I mean, I think the staff does a great job of picking the right question at the right time with the right panelists so that we really can be effective. And it's really heartwarming to hear the stories of we made recommendations and they actually did it. And it really changed that community and left a legacy. So I think that combination for me are the two.
And what are some of the typical questions or problems you see when you're a panelist?
Oh, well, there's a lot about how do you fix up this district, or how do we turn this around, or you know, a lot of physical kinds of questions. Recently, more policy questions too, about how are we going to balance these competing values? How do we make things more equitable? You know, triple bottom line kinds of issues. A lot of how do we talk to each other? How do we come together to solve problems? And even when they don't ask that question, when they don't know that's the issue, often that's one of our biggest recommendations. It's, you know, find someone on your team that understands real estate development, right? Or because often the public sector really doesn't understand that business and doesn't know how to communicate. Or you need to bring the community in more. Or you need an organizational structure that makes this their job all the time. And then the panelists are always wonderful at coming up with some kind of physical, you know, physical analysis and drawing and a different way to see the world, so they can shift their focus on what, you know, even reframe their problem and come up with their own solutions. I mean, ultimately, this is their community, and they're going to solve it, and they're going to execute. So finding ways to talk to each other and stay engaged is a big agenda item.
And in the 12 panels you've been on, do you have a favorite or something memorable from one of them?
Oh, that's a tough choice. I mean, I've had some amazing experiences in some fabulous cities. One that might be interesting, especially now, is talking about Detroit and the Corktown panel. And there we were actually hired by Ford Motor Company's real estate subsidiary, Ford Land, who had been working very closely with the city. But they had purchased, in 2018, they purchased Michigan Central Station, this amazing Baroque old, you know, closed up train station in Corktown, which is like 3/4 of a mile from downtown Detroit. And Corktown is one of the evolving neighborhoods, one of the hottest neighborhoods, actually the oldest neighborhood in Detroit, started by immigrants. and now just wonderfully diverse with all kinds of nationalities and shops and things coming out. A very terrific area. And in the middle of it is this gigantic old train station that has been abandoned for like 30 or 40 years. I mean, full of water, but it was done by the same architects that did Grand Central Station. So, 230 feet high, and then a 13-story office building, really a lot of real estate. And Ford stepped forward to say, this is where we want to relocate our autonomous vehicle and our technology divisions. Everything else is in Dearborn, but we need to create a new environment that is more creative and will foster this kind of innovation. And I remember one of the great lines was, we need to create a neighborhood that will attract PhDs from MIT to come to Corktown instead of coming to the Bay Area or Silicon Valley. So that's a big order. The problem they gave us was actually, how do we future-proof development here? How do we build an innovation district? And what's the role of a developer versus the community? How do we balance those goals? And of course, they had a bunch of other questions. But those were kind of the big issues. How do we future-proof this development, and how do we make the community? They had already hired, as you might imagine, fabulous people to help them renovate the building. They had a great image for what it should be, first floor, mixed use, and then they were going to take half of this space. They were going to have like 5,000 people in this complex, and it would be half Ford and then half other partner companies. So that was underway, and I'll tell you, it was awe-inspiring touring that building and seeing what shape it was in and knowing how it will turn out was really amazing. But our job was more about the community and the development around it. And so that was really interesting. I mean, it was great. And while most panels are working for the public sector, as I said earlier, this one brought a big corporation who had budgeted $1 billion to get this project coming to us and saying, yeah, but what's state of the art? How do we do it right? What are best practices? And help us. And they had, they have a lot going. They have a lot riding on that. So it was really exciting.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have any final thoughts?
I would just say, personally, being part of the panel process has been a professional highlight for me. It's a hallmark program for ULI. The staffing is impeccable always. So, and the results, I mean, as I said, you really make changes in these communities. So it's a really fulfilling thing to do. I guess I'm just really thankful that I've been included as much as I have and had the opportunity to participate. So I thank ULI for that. And I certainly encourage anybody else to take the time. It's an intense week, and it's a whole week, but it's a fabulous experience.
Well, thank you so much, and I always love working on panels with you.
Thanks, Paul.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.